my position is a bit different. I think the Ukrainians will do favors for Trump. But I just don't think they'll be joining the war with Iran for, I'd say, 3 reasons. Number one is I really think the war is over, as you know. I'm still standing by that. And I think there'll be, I promise you, I've always said there is no way the war can continue. Energy prices, the depleted munitions. I really think the war is over. Does that mean for the next 10 years, the US will not try to overthrow the Iranian regime? Of course not. But I'm saying the current kinetic back and forth, at least for this year, next year, it's over. I was surprised we saw the clashes in the last few days, but I really think they'll revive the MOU somehow. Trump has no choice. Really, if he had the munitions, I would not have that position. But if there's no interceptors, they'll just destroy the Gulf. It's that simple. So that's reason number one. There's no war for Ukraine to fight. Reason number two is Iran has long-range missiles, but they need to keep them for the Gulf and Israel. The last thing they need is another enemy, and an enemy that's had hundreds of billions of dollars put into their military-industrial complex. Mm-hmm. They just don't. Can they cause damage to Ukraine? Sure. Can Ukraine cause damage to Iran? Sure. But Iran cannot afford yet another front. They're fighting the world's most powerful military, the United States. They're fighting another very powerful military, Israel. You've got the Gulf countries struck them here and there. And now you're going to add Ukraine to the mix. And no one's really supporting Iran. No big power. The Houthis, Hezbollah. So Iran cannot afford a war with Ukraine. So strategically there, it doesn't make sense. And Ukraine can't afford another front either. They don't have enough interceptors for Russia. They're going to waste them now on Iranian missiles. And obviously there could be sabotage attacks by Iran. And vice versa by Ukraine. So there could be these small tit for tats, favor for Trump there. Iran retaliates, maybe favor for Putin. But I don't expect this to merge into a big global war. But then again, I did not expect us to have the clashes that we had in the last 2 weeks.
I don't think either, by the way, the people escalating are viewing it even as they're creating World War III. I think they view it as, well, they're just extracting as much leverage as they can for whatever issues there. I mean, the Ukrainians, I think the reason the Ukrainians are attacking Iran is because they're trying to force the Americans to continue supporting them. And I think the Iranians, the reason that they gave all those drones and all the assistance they've given Russia over the years is because they want to ensnare Russia in their, alliance. They want to make sure that Russia remains faithful. And I don't think any of them are looking at this as world war, but that is sort of incidentally where we are headed. And in terms of what the Ukrainians are doing, the Ukrainians don't have to engage in conventional fighting in the Middle East. These terrorist cells are all they need to do to continue to prevent any kind of de-escalation. And I think that's another key thing here is clearly somebody wants the temperature to stay high. And I'm very fearful that whether intentional or not, and it may not be, we are now in a period where the threats, it's sort of like it's like a virus that's evolving, right? The threats are now combining, and they're becoming hardened, and they're becoming more durable, and ultimately these fights are fusing, and we might be reaching a critical mass moment where they explode into an entirely new kind of war that is global in reach.
Yeah, so by the way, did you use the word terrorist cells? You've used the T word.
Yeah, well, didn't you say they were Ukrainian cells operating in Iraq?
Yeah, they were Ukrainian cells, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's terror. I mean, that's not a declared... It's not a declared
that's a term that gets overused a bit.
Not in this case. This is literally an act of terror. If that report is accurate about cells, I mean, that is literally a terrorist enterprise.
I think that every country, Iran has cells in Iraq, Ukraine, Russia, the US, Israel.
But that's considered terrorism. I mean, the cell thing is considered, I'm not just saying Ukraine, but I mean, by definition, it is. And, you look, Ukraine, and I'm not saying Russia hasn't either. Russia definitely has with the targets of civilian infrastructure, but Ukraine is engaging in acts of terrorism right now. They are attacking Russian civilian infrastructure. Now, it's part of a wider, strategy. I get it, but very technically speaking, the willingly targeting civilian infrastructure as part of a political agenda is the textbook definition of terrorism. And the Russians are
terrorism, yeah.
doing Russians are doing it too. I'm not
Yeah,
saying one side or the other, but it is the textbook definition of terrorism.
No, it is. It is. You've used the term the right way. I just think the reason I kind of
it's a loaded term. I know.
Is because it gets weaponized. The thing that worries me. So I've told you why I'm not worried about Iran war merging, which concerns you a lot. What worries me is how this Iran war, the failed Iran war that I think is ending, is gonna, spread to the rest of the region. That's the heartbreaking consequence of this war, and something that the Americans, by the way, we can barely hear. It's like barely. I barely heard it, so don't worry. I know you probably can hear it much louder, but for us, it's very low.
Okay.
Yeah, don't worry at all. So it's spreading to the region, and this is something that the world leaders don't care about. Trump doesn't really care about the Houthis, nor does any other world leader. And we're going to have the Yemenis, potentially the Lebanese, suffer the most out of this. And we're seeing now the escalation in Yemen, Saudi. Now, I think there's two scenarios there. I'm 50-50. A deal, the Saudis say, look, we're not going to do this. We saw what happened to the US with the Iranians. We're just going to buy them out before going into making the same mistake as the Americans. If the Americans can't open the Strait of Hormuz, we're not going to open, and couldn't defeat the Houthis years ago.
Right.
We're not going to even try. The alternative would be say, look, we're done with this. This is, Iran is very weak. Iran's pinned down. There's talks about Saudi and the Emiratis funding the Syrians. That's a report by a Saudi news outlet, funding the Syrians to fight Hezbollah with logistical support from the Americans. I'm like, if this is an idea being considered, then I'm sure the Saudis are also considering, maybe with the Emiratis, to get rid of the Houthis for once and for all, because Iran is, Iran won the war, but also Iran is weak. So the worry that I have now is that this war spreads to Yemen. That is my concern.
Oh, that's certainly my concern too. But I think
the news, sorry, Brendan, just for the audience, the news, there were two strikes by the Houthis. Sorry, one strike by the Houthis today. Sorry, there was one strike by somebody today on another energy facility in Saudi. You probably know about it. The Saudis said it's the Iraqi group, the Iraqi militias. The Houthis took responsibility for it, and the Iraqi militias said it wasn't us. So up to you who you believe.
Yeah, well, I think at the end of the day, it's all part of the same war now, right? It doesn't really matter if it was Kataib, Hezbollah in Iraq, or if it was the Houthis in Yemen. Obviously, this is all part of one horrific, ordeal. The thing about the Saudis and Yemen, or in the Houthis, the fact that they haven't done a deal yet after 10 years is really surprising to me. And that's when I start going into these nightmare scenarios of Trump keeps floating the possibility of Jelani, Shara, whatever he's calling himself today, going in with his ISIS field army to go fight Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. Then I start thinking, man, he's got to be getting this. Trump has got to be hearing this from somewhere. This is not a Trump idea. He doesn't think like this. He's getting this from someone he's talking to, who he thinks is a sound mind, which is scary in and of itself, because this is not rational strategy here. This is like playing Risk while drunk for the first time. I mean, it's just all over the place. And at this point, I wouldn't be surprised if the Saudis, because they are so close to Trump and they are so close to the United States and Israel and the UAE, they all kind of get together and come up with these cockamamie ideas. I mean, I just interviewed somebody in the previous hour who's basically saying that this is what was going to happen and they were fine with it. So,
tell me more. What did he say? So just for the audience, that's the interview you just finished. About 20 minutes ago.
Yeah, Brian Labe, I think, but he brought up, his notion that, we need to do regime change. We can't let the regime in Iran continue. Okay, fine. But he also, thinks that a ground incursion would be fine, not of mainland Iran, but of the islands and whatnot. And
did you get into a heated debate? You must have.
I pushed back. I really try not to get into the debate, bro thing. I mean,
no, you could debate. You could debate.
Right. Well, he was a nice guy. I wasn't gonna. I didn't want to, dump all over him. But
similar to the FDD guy you interviewed yesterday, I interviewed him as well.
Yeah,
he's a nice guy too. It's hard to really. He says something like crazy. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? But he's genuine about it. He genuinely believes it.
Yeah. So this guy was basically saying that it's okay if a ground war happens, well, we've got it. Well, we're only using like a fraction of our military power. And, you know, he's basically on board with the ultimate objective, doing whatever it takes, paying whatever price it may cost us to get rid of the regime. That's how committed that guy was. So when I brought up things like proxies and whatnot, he was fine with it. And he thought, actually, as he put it to me, he said it twice, you know, he thinks that the Saudis, the UAE, the Gulf Arab states in general, were going to combine militarily with Israel and the United States in the next wave, and they were all going to operate as one team. And they were going to, and I heard that, and I was like, I don't think that's going to happen. But you know, if it does, God help us, because the Saudis had all the help in the world fighting the Houthis for 10 years. They couldn't do anything other than kill a bunch of kids. So, you know, this is fantasy land stuff. And the idea should be, how do we reopen those waterways to get the oil and everything going? Not how do we, you know, do the next crazy thing, which could be sending ISIS to fight Hezbollah.